From the moment she was born, the doctors knew she would grow differently. Her parents were told early on that her body might not follow the usual path. Still, no one imagined just how tall she would become. As a small child, she already stood higher than children much older than her. At family gatherings, relatives smiled in surprise and gently measured her height against door frames and furniture. At first, it felt harmless. She was too young to understand what it meant. When she started school, things slowly changed. Each year, she grew faster than everyone around her. By the time she was 10, she was already taller than most adults. Teachers tried to help, but they did not always know how. Desks were too small, chairs were uncomfortable, and uniforms never fit properly. Classmates stared at her. Not always with kindness. Some asked questions out of curiosity, while others laughed or pointed. She learned very early how to keep her head down and pretend she did not notice. As she entered her teenage years, her height became impossible to ignore. She passed 6 feet before most girls had finished growing. Doctors ran many tests and explained that her body produced growth hormones in unusual amounts. They used careful words, trying not to frighten her. But she heard the truth between their sentences. Her body would always demand extra care. There could be pain, weakness, and future health problems. She listened quietly, nodding as if she understood everything, even though her mind felt heavy. By the time she reached adulthood, she stood at 7 feet and 3 inches tall. Walking through public places felt like stepping onto a stage. People stopped, stared, whispered, and sometimes took pictures without asking. Children pulled at their parents' hands and pointed openly. Adults tried to hide their curiosity but failed. Some people were kind and respectful, but many treated her like a strange sight rather than a human being. Each outing required strength she never talked about. Shopping for clothes became a tiring task. Shoes were almost impossible to find. Chairs broke under her weight, and beds were never long enough. Airplane seats caused pain, and public transport felt unsafe. These daily struggles piled up quietly. She handled them with patience, but each small moment reminded her that the world was not built for someone like her. Despite everything, she tried to live a normal life. She studied, worked, and supported herself. She laughed with friends who truly cared for her, though such friends were few. Most people either felt uncomfortable around her or focused too much on her appearance. Romantic attention came, but it rarely felt real. Some people were drawn by curiosity, others by the desire to tell a story. Very few wanted to understand her heart. The deepest worry, however, lived far from public eyes. During many medical visits, doctors spoke carefully about her future. They explained that her body might struggle with things most women take for granted. One conversation stayed with her forever. A doctor gently told her that pregnancy could be risky, maybe even impossible. Her body had already endured so much stress, and carrying a child might add more danger. The words were not meant to hurt, but they did. She did not cry in the doctor's office. She waited until she was alone. That night, lying on a bed too short for her, she stared at the ceiling and felt a quiet ache in her chest. She had never been sure she wanted children, but hearing that the choice might be taken away changed everything. It was no longer about desire. It was about loss. From that moment on, fear followed her silently. Whenever she saw mothers with their children, she smiled politely, but felt a sharp pain inside. She wondered if love and family were meant for someone like her. She asked herself questions she never spoke aloud. Would anyone want a future with her? Would someone accept the risks and uncertainty that came with her body? She became skilled at hiding these thoughts. In public, she stood tall and calm. She answered questions with humor and patience. She avoided conversations that touched too closely on marriage or children. People often assumed she was strong because of her size, but they did not see the emotional weight she carried every day. Loneliness came quietly, not loudly. It showed up in empty evenings, in unanswered messages, in moments when she wished someone would see beyond her height. She feared that her life would always be defined by what she could not do, rather than who she was. Still, She refused to let bitterness take over. She believed that if she stayed kind and open, life might surprise her one day. At night, she sometimes imagined a different future. One where she was not stared at, where she did not need to explain herself, where love felt simple and safe. These thoughts felt almost dangerous, because hope made disappointment hurt more. Yet she could not stop dreaming entirely. Somewhere deep inside, she held on to a small belief that her story was not finished. This was the life she lived before love entered it. A life shaped by height, fear, and quiet strength. A life where she learned to survive in a world that often did not understand her. She did not know it yet, but the doubts that followed her for years were about to be tested in ways she never imagined. After years of living carefully and guarding her heart, she stopped expecting anything special from life. Her days followed a simple routine. She went to work, came home, and spent quiet evenings reading or watching shows. Crowded places still made her uncomfortable, so she avoided them whenever possible. She had learned that peace often came from staying unnoticed, even though being unnoticed was almost impossible for someone her height. One afternoon, everything began to change in the most ordinary way. She was invited to a small gathering by a coworker. At first, she planned to refuse. Social events often left her tired, both physically and emotionally. But something pushed her to go. Maybe it was loneliness, or maybe it was the small voice inside her that hoped for change. She arrived early, standing near the edge of the room, unsure of herself. As usual, that was when she noticed him. He was not the loudest person in the room, nor the most confident. He spoke calmly, listened more than he talked, and treated everyone with the same respect. When he first looked at her, there was no shock on his face, no wide eyes or nervous smile. He simply nodded and greeted her like anyone else. That small moment felt strange in the best way. They started talking about simple things: work, daily life, favorite foods, small jokes. He did not ask about her height right away, and when the topic eventually came up naturally, he did not make it the center of the conversation. He asked thoughtful questions, not out of curiosity, but care. For the first time in a long while, she felt relaxed in someone's presence. Over the next few weeks, they kept running into each other, sometimes on purpose, sometimes by chance. They shared short messages, then longer conversations. He never made her feel rushed or judged. When they met for coffee, he chose places where she felt comfortable. He noticed details others missed, like how certain chairs caused her pain, or how long walks tired her more than she admitted. Slowly, trust began to grow. She found herself laughing more easily. She spoke about her childhood, her struggles, and even her fears. He listened without trying to fix everything. He did not tell her to be brave or strong. Instead, he told her that it was okay to feel tired and uncertain. Those words meant more to her than any compliment she had ever received. Still, doubt followed her closely. She had been hurt before, not always by cruel people, but by careless ones. She worried that once the newness faded, he might start seeing her the way others did. She wondered if his kindness would change when he fully understood the challenges of being with her. These thoughts kept her awake at night, even as happiness slowly entered her life. When they finally decided to call their connection something more than friendship, reactions from others were mixed. Friends asked questions that felt too personal. Strangers stared when they walked together in public. Some people whispered, others smiled awkwardly. She noticed all of it and felt old fears return. But this time, something was different. He noticed too, and instead of ignoring it, he stood a little closer to her. He defended her gently but firmly when needed. He corrected people without anger. He never made her feel like a burden. When she apologized for the attention they received, he reminded her that she had nothing to be sorry for. His calm support slowly replaced years of self-doubt. Their relationship grew through shared moments rather than big gestures. Quiet dinners, long talks, peaceful walks at her pace. He adjusted without complaint, and she learned to accept help without feeling weak. For the first time, love felt safe instead of stressful. Yet one fear remained unspoken for a long time. The question of children sat between them like a shadow. She did not know how or when to bring it up. She worried that once he knew the truth, he might walk away. The thought of losing him scared her more than she wanted to admit. One evening, after a long silence, she finally told him everything. She spoke slowly, her voice shaking. She explained the medical warnings, the risks, and the possibility that motherhood might never be an option for her. She did not ask him to stay. She only wanted him to know the truth. He did not respond right away. He took a deep breath and held her hand. When he spoke, his words were simple and honest. He told her that love was not a contract built on conditions. He said he cared about her, not a future he imagined. Whatever came next, he wanted to face it with her, not without her. Tears filled her eyes, not from sadness, but relief. For the first time, she felt chosen for who she truly was. Not as a story, not as a challenge, but as a partner. That night, something inside her healed. Their love did not erase the world's judgment, but it gave her strength to face it. People continued to stare, and questions did not disappear. But now, she was no longer standing alone. Together, they walked forward, unaware that their journey was only beginning, and that the greatest test of their love still waited ahead. As their relationship grew stronger, reality slowly began to demand attention. Love brought comfort, but it also brought serious questions that could not be avoided forever. The happiness they shared was real, yet both of them knew that life would eventually test their bond. For her, the fear she had carried for years returned quietly, asking to be faced at last. At first, they avoided heavy conversations. They enjoyed the present, choosing laughter and calm moments over worry. But small reminders appeared everywhere. A family gathering where children played in the yard. A casual comment from a friend about the future. Each moment reminded her of the words doctors had once spoken. The thought of disappointing him made her heart feel heavy, even though he had never shown any signs of regret. One evening, she suggested they visit a doctor together. Her voice was calm, but inside she was shaking. She needed clarity, not only for herself, but for their future. He agreed, without hesitation. On the day of the appointment, he stayed close to her, matching his steps to hers, making sure she felt supported. The hospital environment brought back old memories. The smell, the quiet halls, the serious faces of medical staff. All of it reminded her of past warnings. The doctor reviewed her medical history carefully. He explained the facts in simple terms. Pregnancy was possible, but it would not be easy. Her body would be under great stress, and there would be risks at every stage. Careful planning and constant monitoring would be required. She listened quietly, holding her partner's hand tightly. Each sentence felt heavy, even when spoken gently. The doctor made sure they understood that no promises could be made. Success was uncertain, and safety would always be the top priority. They left the office with more information than answers. At home, silence filled the room. She feared that this was the moment everything would change. Finally, she spoke. She told him that she did not want to put him through fear or disappointment. She said she would understand if he wanted a different life, one without constant worry. Her words came out slowly, as if she were preparing for loss. He surprised her once again. He told her that fear was not something to run from, but something to face together. He said that love did not mean choosing the easiest path, but choosing the person. Whether they became parents or not, he wanted to build a life with her. His steady voice made her realize that she was not facing this alone. From that point on, every decision became shared. They talked late into the night, listing hopes, fears, and possible outcomes. They promised honesty, even when the truth was uncomfortable. Some nights ended with calm understanding, others ended with tears. But no matter how difficult the conversation, they never walked away from each other. She began to notice how deeply he cared in the smallest ways. He researched medical information, not to scare himself, but to be prepared. He adjusted plans without complaint. He reassured her when doubt returned, reminding her that her worth was not tied to her body's limits. Outside their private world, pressure continued. Family members offered opinions, often without understanding the risks involved. Some encouraged them strongly, while others warned against it. Each comment added weight to an already heavy decision. She learned to protect her peace by limiting how much she shared. The emotional struggle was just as intense as the physical concerns. She feared losing control over her own body. She feared failure. Most of all, she feared harming the life she already cherished. Some days, hope felt strong. Other days, fear took over completely. Through it all, he remained patient, never pushing, never demanding. Eventually, they reached a quiet agreement. They would move forward carefully, guided by medical advice and their own emotional readiness. There was no rush, no pressure to meet anyone else's expectations. This decision did not bring instant relief, but it brought a sense of unity. For the first time, the future felt like something they were shaping together. Still, uncertainty remained. Appointments, tests, and long waits became part of their routine. Each result brought a mix of relief and anxiety. She learned to live with uncertainty, something she had feared her entire life. She discovered that strength did not always mean confidence. Sometimes, it meant simply continuing despite fear. During this period, their bond deepened in unexpected ways. They learned to communicate without words. A touch, a look, or a quiet moment together carried more meaning than long speeches. Love became less about excitement and more about trust. Though the road ahead remained unclear, one truth became certain. No matter what happened next, they had already overcome something powerful. She was no longer defined only by fear. She was part of a partnership built on patience, respect, and courage. And as they prepared for the next chapter, neither of them knew how much their lives were about to change. The moment she realized something was different, she did not allow herself to celebrate. Her body had surprised her before, and she had learned not to trust hope too quickly. Still, the signs were there, quiet but persistent. When the test finally confirmed it, she sat in silence for a long time, staring at the result as if it might disappear. Her hands trembled, not from joy alone, but from fear of what this could mean. When she told him, his reaction was calm, but his eyes filled with emotion. He did not jump or shout. Instead, he wrapped his arms around her carefully, as if holding something precious and fragile at the same time. Neither of them spoke for a while. They both understood that this was not the end of their worries, but the beginning of a very difficult journey. From the very start, doctors treated her case with great care. Every appointment felt serious. She was closely monitored, more than most people ever are. Simple things others might ignore were carefully checked in her case. She spent many hours in waiting rooms, listening to the quiet sounds of machines and distant voices. Each visit brought a mix of relief and new concerns. Physically, her body struggled. Her height and condition made even daily movements more tiring than usual. Some days, she woke up exhausted, her legs heavy, and her back aching. Walking required more effort. Rest became necessary, not optional. She hated feeling limited. But she reminded herself that this time, rest was an act of strength. Emotionally, the journey was just as demanding. Fear followed her everywhere. She worried about every small change in her body. Each night, she lay awake, listening to her breathing, wondering if everything was still okay. Sometimes she felt guilty for feeling afraid when she believed she should feel grateful. These thoughts confused her, but she learned to accept them as part of the process. He became her anchor during this time. He attended every appointment he could. He asked questions when she felt too tired to speak. At home, he helped without making her feel helpless. He adjusted their life quietly, rearranging furniture, planning meals, and creating a space where she could rest safely. His care was steady, never dramatic, never loud. The outside world continued to watch. News of her condition and situation spread among people they knew. Some offered kind words, Others expressed doubt and concern. A few questioned whether it was wise to continue. She learned to protect her heart by limiting what she heard. Not every opinion deserved space in her mind. There were moments when fear nearly won. One appointment brought unexpected concerns, and the tension in the room felt heavy. She saw the seriousness in the doctor's face and felt her chest tighten. That night, she cried quietly, trying not to wake him. She questioned her choices and blamed herself for risking so much. When he noticed her tears, he did not offer false comfort. He simply sat beside her, holding her hand, reminding her that whatever happened, she was not alone. He told her that courage did not mean never being afraid. It meant continuing even when fear felt overwhelming. His words did not remove the fear, but they made it easier to carry. As time passed, small moments of happiness began to appear. Hearing reassuring news during checkups brought cautious smiles. Feeling subtle changes reminded her that life was growing within her. These moments felt fragile, like glass, but they were real. She allowed herself to feel them, even if just for a moment. Her body demanded constant attention. Simple tasks required planning. She moved carefully, listened closely to her body, and followed instructions strictly. Some days were easier than others. On difficult days, frustration returned. She missed the independence she once fought so hard to protect. Accepting help was still hard, but she reminded herself that this phase was temporary. The connection between them deepened further. They talked more openly than ever before. They shared fears without shame and hopes without certainty. Their conversations were honest and quiet. They learned to find comfort in small routines, like shared meals and peaceful evenings. There were nights when fear returned strongly. She imagined every possible outcome and struggled to sleep. On those nights, he stayed awake with her, talking softly until her breathing slowed. Sometimes they sat in silence, finding peace simply by being together. As the weeks passed, progress continued. Each milestone felt important. Doctors remained cautious but hopeful. She learned to live between worry and belief. She did not plan far ahead. She focused on one day at a time, one step at a time. By now, she understood something deeply. This journey was not about proving anything to the world. It was not about showing strength or defeating doubt. It was about love, patience, and trust. It was about allowing herself to hope, even when hope felt risky. Her body carried more than weight. It carried fear, love, and determination all at once. Though the road remained uncertain, she had already changed. She was no longer just surviving life. She was facing it with courage she never knew she had. As the next stage approached, she knew the hardest moment was still ahead. But she also knew something else with certainty. Whatever came next, she would not face it alone. The final stage arrived quietly, without any dramatic warning. One morning, she woke up feeling different. Not with fear, but with a calm she had not felt in a long time. She knew the moment they had been preparing for was close. Instead of panic, she felt a deep focus. Every step they had taken, every careful choice, had led to this day. They moved slowly and carefully, following the plan doctors had prepared. The hospital staff already knew her case well. There were no rushed movements, no confusion. Everything felt controlled and respectful. Even so, her heart beat fast, not because of danger, but because of how much this moment meant. As she lay there, she thought about the long road behind her. Years of being stared at, years of being told what might never be possible. Years of fear quietly shaping her dreams. Now, she was here, standing at the edge of something she once believed would always be out of reach. He stayed by her side the entire time. His voice was calm, steady, familiar. When fear tried to return, his presence pushed it away. He reminded her to breathe, to focus, to trust the people around her, and the strength within herself. She did not feel alone for a single second. The process required patience. Time seemed to slow down, stretching each moment. Her body worked harder than it ever had before. There was effort, strain, and exhaustion. But there was also determination. She focused on the reason she was there, letting that purpose guide her through every difficult moment. Then, at last, everything changed. A small sound filled the room. It was soft, but it carried more meaning than anything she had ever heard. In that instant, years of fear fell away. Tears filled her eyes before she even realized she was crying. She had imagined this moment many times, but the reality was deeper, stronger, and more emotional than any dream. When they placed the child in her arms, she felt something settle inside her heart. The weight was gentle, real, and warm. She looked down, afraid to blink, afraid the moment might disappear. All the doubts she had carried for so long suddenly felt distant. What mattered was right there. Breathing softly against her, he stood beside her. His face filled with emotion he did not try to hide. His hand rested on her shoulder, grounding both of them. They shared a look that needed no words. It was a look filled with relief, gratitude, and a quiet pride in what they had faced together. Recovery was slow and careful, just like everything else in her journey. Her body needed time, rest, and patience. Some days were tiring. Other days brought small discomforts. But every challenge felt lighter now. Each time she felt exhausted, she reminded herself why it was worth it. Holding her child became her greatest comfort. Late nights, early mornings, quiet moments in between, each one built a connection that felt powerful and peaceful. She did not worry about perfection. She focused on presence, on love, on learning one moment at a time. People reacted strongly when they heard her story. Some were shocked, some were deeply moved. Many who had once doubted now spoke with respect, but she did not seek their approval. What mattered most was the life she was living, not the opinions that followed it. She noticed something had changed within her. She no longer shrank under attention. She no longer felt defined by her height or condition. Motherhood did not erase her struggles, but it reshaped how she saw herself. She was not someone who had been limited by life. She was someone who had lived fully within her reality. As time passed, routines formed. Simple days filled with feeding, resting, and quiet joy. She learned her child's expressions, tiny sounds, and rhythms. Each small milestone brought a new kind of happiness. It was not loud or dramatic. It was steady and deep. He continued to be her partner in every sense. They supported each other through tired moments and shared laughter over small victories. Their bond, already strong, became unbreakable. They had faced fear together and come out changed, not hardened, but softened by love. Sometimes, late at night, she reflected on her past self. The young girl who felt different. The woman who feared love and loss. She wished she could tell her one thing, that life would not always follow the path others expected, but that did not mean it would be empty. In fact, it could become richer in ways she never imagined. She understood now that strength does not always look like standing tall. Sometimes it looks like asking for help. Sometimes it looks like resting. Sometimes it looks like believing in hope, even when it feels risky. Her story was not about defying nature or proving anyone wrong. It was about choice, care, and love. It was about accepting uncertainty and still moving forward. It was about allowing herself to want something, even when the world told her it might not happen. As she held her child close, feeling a quiet peace settle around her, she knew one thing with certainty. Fear had once shaped her life, but it no longer defined it. Love had taken its place, and in that love, she found not only motherhood, but a deeper understanding of herself. A woman who had faced her doubts, embraced her reality, and discovered that sometimes the most unexpected outcomes carry the greatest meaning.